AEA staff support some of the best work happening in school buildings all over the state. We're going to take our listeners on the road into these buildings and talk to AEA and district staff about partnerships making a difference for kids. On today's episode, I hit the road to see the work of Grantwood AEA staff who hit the road every day. Grantwood AEA van drivers cover 4,900 square miles in all 7 counties served by our agency to deliver resources from our vast science center and media library. By delivering these resources to all communities in our service area, we're able to support all teachers in our districts. We'll start our journey by following the path of a vast kit. Each kit is packed up by staff in the VAST Center at our 33rd Avenue facility. It's then delivered with care to our area teachers. Before making our way to the delivery vans, I wanted to talk to Grantwood AEA Science Consultant Christopher Soldat and Science Center Assistant Mary Zobek about how these kits make a big difference in helping teachers.
Imagine you're a teacher and you get a set of materials, you open up your box, and everything you need is right there. Mm-hmm. And many teachers say, I don't have to go to late night stores and go shopping and find, straws or balls or whatever.
No trip to Walmart or Michael's.
At midnight,
right,
you know how teachers work. They're up all night getting ready for the next day. So we kind of take that burden off of them so that they can focus on their instruction and being the best teachers that they can be.
I always think of these science kits as a lab in a box. Each kit contains things like pipettes, beakers, and even live cockroaches. Everything teachers need to adhere to statewide science standards. I asked how packaging these materials in a single kit, and more importantly, hand-delivering them to schools, makes a difference.
So it was an equity issue. How can we provide high-quality instructional materials and the curriculum to rural, suburban, and urban schools so every student, no matter which school they're going to, have access to high-quality instructional material.
Have you run into any problems with supply chain issues, like getting the materials that normally used to be really easy to get, that are now maybe a little more difficult to get to replenish the kits?
Over the last year, we did have a little bit of issues with some of the plasticware. I know my coworker who does a lot of the ordering had placed orders for even basins, for the aquatic materials or growing things in. And we placed the order in the summer, and I think the order came in December or January. And we do rely on the teachers' feedback also, because occasionally, a vendor might not send a product that works for the investigations the way teachers and the students need it to work.
Chris, when you go out into buildings, I'm sure you happen to wander into a classroom periodically that's using one of the kits. What do you like when you see them actually doing a lab, for example?
I love sitting down and listening to kids talk about what they're figuring out. Mm-hmm. It's all about the sense making. So there's always a question that they're trying to resolve, and the teacher is suggesting that they plan an investigation with a set of materials, and they're going to look carefully at their results and try to make sense out of it. So it's very enjoyable for me to help teachers probe deeper for their understandings and push their thinking a little bit further with those set of materials and those investigations.
It shouldn't matter where you live. Students should have access to high-quality materials. Thanks to the VAST kits and Grantwood AEA drivers, all students can have access to the same lab and the same learning experience. I was curious what thought and care went into adhering these materials to Iowa's statewide science standards.
It matched the great burst in learning we had about how students learn science. We want all our students to wonder about the natural world that we live in and to have lots of questions and for them to figure out for themselves. The teacher is a facilitator of that group, so that instructional piece is not so much telling anymore like it used to be. Remember when you were a junior high student? The teacher would always tell you what you needed to know by Friday for the quiz. And now we want students to figure it out for themselves.
Yeah, inquiry is the important thing.
Yes. Yeah.
I heard all I needed to hear. I helped one of our drivers, Rick Ironside, load up a van with some VAST kits, and we hit the road together to Central City. Once I arrived, I sat down with Grantwood AEA science consultant Laura Musser, as well as a middle school teacher and instructional coach from Central City, Rachel Sackett and Laura Spray here at Central City to talk about the use of the science kits that Grantwood AEA partners with our area districts. Now, two of you have used VAS kits actually in teaching in the classroom, right? Mm-hmm. What makes them useful to you?
So they're basically a template. You can change what you want. You can manipulate it to what you want and what your kids need. So it's nice to be able to have that as something to rely on, and it saves me a lot of time. And I can tweak things the way that I would like to tweak them as well.
Both Laura and Rachel have spent a lot of time at the VAS Center getting trained in all the units that they have taught. And Laura actually helped facilitate a unit a time or two. So that's been great to collaborate and to work with them.
So what does it look like when you facilitate a professional development opportunity with teachers in how to use the kit?
So there's different components to that. We tend to start the morning with just good science instruction. So things like science notebooking, a driving question board, how to implement this high quality science instruction to meet the needs of all the kiddos in their classes. And then the afternoon is more going through the unit investigation by investigation, talking about materials and how to manage all of those things.
So all three of you have had experience as a teacher in the classroom. So let me ask this question. Do you think you could replicate what the kit does for you?
So that's an interesting question.
Right.
When I started teaching, I took the classroom of a veteran teacher. She was amazing. And she had kind of all of her things that she's pieced together over attending different workshops and things. But when I was a new teacher coming in, I didn't know how to use those materials. Mm-hmm. So I came to the VAS Center and was able to use those units. And it would have taken a lot of time to put all those things together in a way that was so user-friendly as they are.
Mm-hmm. And I think even the providing of the consumable stuff too, and having it all in one place, and they train you on, well, these units, you'll be using these things, so prep a little bit ahead of time, helps us save time on the back end. That's all really useful too, because teachers don't have a lot of free time or a lot of free income.
Right. I was thrilled to hear our area teachers appreciate the convenience of these science kits. But what about the students? I asked these three if they've noticed if the students appreciate having a lab in a box.
They were just doing transpiration, packaging up the leaves, and they just really enjoyed that. They just liked the hands-on component a lot more than what me just being the sage on the stage. And it has everything in there, so that's really great. And
already aligned with, standards that we use.
Yes.
So to have that expertise already kind of in place too is also really helpful.
Yeah. Sounds like the VAS Center was really making the intended impact. I got a chance to open up a kit and was given a tour of the school before hitting the road again back to the agency, where I met up with Diana Gears, a Grantwood AEA teacher librarian, who could tell me about how our vans deliver even more than just science kits. I'm going to talk about one thing quickly that I know you've been working with Laura with the FOSS kits. Talk about the process that you've used to kind of align the materials we have with the work and the kits that go out to the schools.
Yes, that's a great question. I worked with librarians at other AEAs, and we purchased books that align with science standards that are in our Mac and VIA, because we always want to try to make sure there's digital copies available that have those built-in connections to curriculum, but also to provide accessibility features. Then I talked with Laura, and she wanted to somehow connect the work of that to the FOSS kits. So we had to kind of think about how to do that and not have to completely change the sets that we already had. So we went through the FOSS kits and found which unit in each kit aligned with which standards, which science standards.
There's a QR code, and that's how the teacher would know what materials that you offer in the meeting center that actually are aligned with that FOSS kit, right?
Yes, because the FOSS kit comes with materials, and QR code will take them to a document where I have linked in each of our books, our ebooks that go with that kit. It's also important to note that those are all just related to those standards. And so then it's also another way for students who want to learn more. It's another way for personalization and voice and choice.
So it could be an extension on something they previously learned.
Absolutely.
Grantwood AEA's Media Library covers the gamut of subject matters. I asked Diana the approximate number of items checked out from our media library in a given year.
I know last year we had around 50,000 items that were delivered to schools. We have things such as our professional collection here, where teachers can borrow books to learn more about research in literacy or on developing more collaboration in their classroom or to learn more about their standards. And then we also have items that they can use for their classroom. Manipulatives, we have things like idiom cards. So just all kinds of things. We have models that people can borrow. This is a thermocoupler that could be used in science when studying.
Kind of sounds like a Back to the Future
Electricity.
car part, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's quite the variety. I was curious what the process was in purchasing materials for our media library.
It's very complex here. It's a little bit different than when I was in a school library where I was purchasing for this age range and based on teacher recommendations and what I knew about this age range. And so that's when I decide, okay, I need to talk with our experts here on items they might recommend. For instance, I worked with the math team and they have materials that they would take and regularly recommend. They wanted to be able to have those to recommend to any district rather than leaving them. And so I worked with them and made sure that I purchased all of the items that they were recommending so that they were in the library and they could let the teachers know, if you want to borrow this, here's how you can do that.
So how do those things get to the schools?
It's a really complex system. Our staff pulls items every day that are reserved to go out to buildings, and they put them in a section in our back area where then the van drivers know to go and grab their materials, and they load them in their van, and then they go deliver them to the schools. When teachers are ready to return them, there's a location in their building, and our van drivers pick them up, bring them back. We clean them and get them back on the shelves and ready to go back out for the next user.
I picked up some materials and took another van trip down to Mid-Prairie Community School District in Wellman, Iowa. Once there, I sat down with Mid-Prairie teacher librarian Caitlin Dodds to discuss how Diana and the media library resources are making a difference for area schools. Diana has just kind of been your teacher librarian mentor, or
For the past 3 years.
And how did that relationship form?
I emailed her with a question, just a random question, and she was very instrumental in helping me to understand different parts of using the AEA resources.
So it just sort of happened organically.
Yeah,
right? Good.
yeah. And she actually came and visited during the pandemic year, and we were able to talk a lot. And she was very helpful. She's been very instrumental in helping me to navigate the world of teacher librarian.
Right.
I'm just trying to get an understanding of what the teacher librarian does and all the different hats that we use navigating through this changing educational system where technology is becoming more important and the librarian role is changing vastly.
I was in the elementary school in the 80s, early 80s. So the library media specialist has changed exponentially since then. So what is it more now? What are the main things that you do on a daily basis?
A lot of it is technology. We teach a lot of online safety, utilizing resources, doing research, citations.
It's nice to hear our online resources are helping schools adapt to the modern world. I asked how students typically utilize ebooks through an AEA resource called Mac and Via.
The middle and the high school use Mac and Via quite a bit. Especially the middle school primarily uses Mac and Via. So when it was down, the students were all, oh my gosh, Mac and Via.
Do they use it primarily for research and topics and sources, or how do they use it?
Or for online books, just to read, or for research. There's a lot of different components to it that they use.
Yeah. So they can do fiction, nonfiction, kind of the whole gamut.
Yep. And they can find books that they really like that maybe we don't have in physical format that they can get through the system.
When thinking back on that idea of equity, I realized Grantwood AEA online resources, much like the vans delivering physical resources, help our rural teachers get the educational materials they need.
I think that as a rural school, we do use a lot of the online resources quite a bit more than maybe a more urban school, just because we don't have a lot of other resources. So the way we use the resources is different maybe than, say, like Cedar Rapids or like Iowa City Community School District.
Do you think that having access to these resources has improved learning for your students and teaching?
Definitely. AEA has been instrumental in a lot of different programs that we've had here at the school in general that I've just kind of witnessed as, an employee of Mid-Prairie. The AEA is a great resource for Mid-Prairie, between coaches for new teachers and resources for the libraries. People like Diana Gears, they have really been helpful in creating a successful learning environment for the students at Mid-Prairie.
I'm happy to hear how Mid-Prairie and Central City Community School Districts are using our AEA resources to improve learning for their students. And I'm thrilled that our van drivers can both literally and figuratively deliver on our mission to ensure success for all learners. I'm John Speer, and this has been On the Road.